Am I recording? Hello, it's me again, Chaz, making another video. This one's a little different. So, the last 2 weeks, we had a couple of World Cup qualifiers in the AFC, the CONMEBOL, and the OFC. So, the AFC just started their third round of qualifiers. The CONMEBOL was on match day 7 and match day 8 of their qualifiers, and the OFC were doing their own qualifying rounds to enter the actual World Cup qualifiers, OFC proper. So my video is going to be about my personal top 5 teams that I think did well over this international break, and my 5 teams that I think did poorly over the international break for these World Cup qualifiers. So let's start off with the team that I feel have done poorly, but not as bad as the other 4 teams who I would pick above them. So let's start off with. I'm going to go with Qatar. Start off with Qatar. Their last 2 games, they lost to UAE 3-1, and then they drew 2-2 with North Korea. Plus, North Korea was down to they were down to 10 men for quite most of that match, and even though Qatar was able to get to be 2-1 up after being 1-0 down, they threw that away, allowing North Korea to equalise. So a very terrible start, I would say, for Qatar. I mean, they got a point, but still they should have done better against North Korea. There are stronger teams in the group that they're in who they haven't played yet, like Iran and Uzbekistan, who both look strong. So they're playing Kyrgyzstan next. Should be able to beat them, I would feel. But as the host of the last World Cup, it'd be good if they could qualify for a World Cup without being the hosts this time around. It would show progress in Qatarian football if they could qualify for this World Cup. But not a great start for them. I'll point out 1-2 North Korea, who I don't know, maybe they should have beat. So, especially being a man up for so long in the game. And that's the reason why I have Qatar as 5th in the nation that I believe did not have a good World Cup qualifying campaign so far. During this break, they could bounce back, but yeah, they're 5th. Now I'm going to pick one of the nations that I believe had a great World Cup qualifiers during this break. So 5th, we're going to go to the CONMEBOL, and that would be Bolivia, who started off match day 7 in 9th with 3 points. But they won their last 2 games, beating Venezuela, who were 4th at the time. They beat them 4-0, and then they beat Chile 2-1. The start of match day 7, both Chile and Venezuela were above them. Now, Bolivia moved up to 8th. They are level on points with Paraguay, who are 7th in the table, which is the playoff position to get into the World Cup. They are also a point behind both Venezuela now and Brazil, who are 6th and 5th. They are the automatic position to qualify for the World Cup properly. And they're also 2 points behind Ecuador, who are currently 4th Massive wins for them after starting off poorly in ninth. Yes, they only moved up one spot, but now they've closed the gap on the other nations to try and qualify for the next World Cup. Um, Very positive for Bolivia, and that's why I do have them as fifth. Their next game is at home against Colombia, who currently are second. Big game for them, but yeah, I have Bolivia fifth. Okay, now the nation. Going back to the teams that I believe played poor during the World Cup qualifiers. So fourth. I'm going to say Peru. Peru only picked up a point in their last two games at the World Cup qualifiers in the CONMEBOL. Um, they they didn't do what Bolivia did. Instead of trying to step up. They did fail to do that. They managed to get a point against Colombia, and Colombia are currently second. Though they lost that, they drew that towards the end. Diaz in the 82nd minute was able to score. Could have been a really big 3 points for them. And then they went to play Ecuador and they lost to Ecuador. I praised the keeper; he was really good, but again, it wasn't enough for Peru. They needed at least one win that would have put them in a better position. Unfortunately, they failed to win any of their games. Only picked up a point. They started off match day 7 in the CONMEBOL's World Cup qualifiers bottom with 2 points. Now they've got 3 points now, but still bottom of the table. Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle for them. But yeah, Peru, I've got them at fourth. Okay, now I'm going to move to the AFC now, who I believe is fourth. Team that I feel played well, had a great World Cup qualifiers so far, and that is Uzbekistan. Just keep winning again. Back to back wins, maximum points so far. They're they're playing. So Iran, they're playing next. Who was in their group in round 2? Both nations couldn't beat each other, so they're playing each other a third time as well now. We'll see what happens there. Iran, I give an honourable mention as another nation that I feel played really well during the World Cup qualifiers. Pretty much doing the same as Uzbekistan, back to back wins. But yeah, Uzbekistan quality, top of their group. Like I said, playing Iran next. Great start. I believe this could be their very first World Cup if they qualify. I, still early days, but this could be the very first time they've qualified for a World Cup. So I'll see how well they're going to continue that form. But yeah, Uzbekistan, top of the table in Group A, top of the table in Group A. Playing Iran, who's second next. Yeah, that's why I have Uzbekistan as my number 4 team that had a great World Cup qualifiers during this break. All right. Yes, now go back to nations that I think have done poor. And that will be Chile. Going back to the CONMEBOL, Chile lost their last 2 games, Argentina, and then they lost to Bolivia. They started off as 8th during match day 7 and have dropped down to 9th. Not looking good for Chile. Also didn't have a good Copa America as well. They need to do a lot better if they're going to qualify. I don't know if they will. But yeah, I got Chile there at 3. They got a couple of young talent coming through, but I think that golden era that they had, around 2016 and all that, I think Yeah, I think they're done personally. So yeah, that's probably with Chile, but we'll see. Let's go to number three. Sticking with the CONMEBOL, on the opposite end, second in the table, Colombia. Brilliant. Managed to rescue a point against Peru. So not necessarily the best start, but they managed to beat Argentina, who are still top of the table. Argentina haven't lost a game since losing to Uruguay, and with these two positive results, it took Colombia from third to now second, above Uruguay, and just 2 points below Argentina. Unfortunate in the Copa America that they wasn't able to beat Argentina at that time, but they bounced back. They're looking in a great position to qualify for the next World Cup, and that's why I have Colombia as number three in nations that had a good World Cup qualifier campaign at this stage. So let's go on the second team that I believe had a horrible World Cup qualifying campaign to kick off. Um, that is Australia, who shockingly lost to Bahrain, got a man sent off as well. They were at home, and then they went up against Indonesia. Drew that game with Indonesia. That was a 0-0 draw. So yeah, poor start to Australia in the World Cup qualifying campaign. They are playing China next, so maybe they could bounce back from that game. So the nation that I'm picking as second top, who I think had a great World Cup campaign, that is Samoa. Samoa was able to qualify for the qualifier, managing to beat Tonga in the final. They started off when they played American Samoa, beat them, then played Tonga in the final, was able to beat them as well. That went to extra time though, but Samoa did well. They're now in Group B. Will be playing a strong team like New Zealand, but Samoa, brilliant for them. And now with a guaranteed spot for an OFC team to qualify for the World Cup, this is a positive. Maybe Samoa could get that spot. We'll see. But Samoa, number two, the second place nation that I think had a great World Cup qualifiers during this break. And now I'll pick the worst team. I mentioned them earlier, that I thought had the worst showing for the World Cup qualifiers so far. Number one, that is China. China started off losing 7-0 to Japan. Horrible result for them. Then they played Saudi Arabia, then lost 2-1. Again, similar to Qatar when they played North Korea, being a man up and fell in that game. Saudi Arabia was a man down against China, and China wasn't able to capitalize on that and lost that game 2-1 at home. Horrible start for China. They are up against Australia next, who have Australia as seconds, had a poor start to this World Cup campaign. So those two teams will be going up against each other next, but horrible start for China. I think the last time China was in the World Cup, and I think it was only one time, and that was in 2002. So very, very long time since China has been able to qualify for a World Cup, and they're not starting off well. On the opposite end, now the team that I believe had the best World Cup qualifiers so far, or drawing this weekend anyway. Not weekend, sorry, drawing last week's. matches. That is a team that I mentioned already who beat China 7-0. That's Japan. Japan won 7-0 against China in the third round. Match day one. Then they beat Bahrain 5-0 away from home. 12 goals in the last two games. In round two, maximum 18 points. Won all their games. Started off with this winning their last two games as well. Japan, yeah, so far just looking really strong in their region. In the AFC, they're just looking like the strongest team by a fair bit right now. We'll see what happens further on, but Japan just looking very strong. Japan will be going up against second in the table, Saudi Arabia. So those two nations go up against each other. Next, both teams often qualify for a World Cup, so that'd be a nice game to check up on. All right. So yeah, those are the teams that I thought did poorly and did fantastic at the World Cup qualifiers so far at this stage. Have another quick check. The worst teams, I believe, Qatar, Peru, Chile, Australia, China. And the better teams, Bolivia, Uzbekistan, Colombia, Samoa, and Japan. We're going to have a look at all of these nations' next fixtures. Let's start off with Qatar. So Qatar's next game is against Kyrgyzstan. Peru will be playing Uruguay next. Chile will be going up against Brazil. And Australia and China will be going up against each other next. So those are the next fixtures. All of those games will be played in October. All right. Let's move on to the next teams. Teams that have played very well. Bolivia will be going up against Colombia. So those two nations will be going up against each other. That's my fifth team and my third team. Uzbekistan will be playing Iran. Samoa will be going up against Vanuatu. And Japan will be playing Saudi Arabia. All right, I'm going to finish this video up with if I think any of these nations will qualify or not for the next World Cup and a little bit of history, I guess. So let's start off with Qatar. They were the host of the last World Cup. I don't think they're going to qualify this way. I don't think they're going to top round three. I think if they do qualify, it will be in round 4. So in the AFC's World Cup qualifiers, if you don't qualify for round 3, being first or second, you do have a second chance. If you end up finishing third or fourth in your group, that will be move that nations to round. That moves those nations to round 4. And if you top your group, you qualify for the World Cup. That's in round 4. If you finish in second, you got another chance, but you have to go up against the second team in the second group, in Group B or Group A. And those two nations will have to play each other. And whoever wins that one will then have to go through another playoffs. But if Qatar do qualify, it will probably be in round 4. Peru missed out in the last World Cup. And I think they're going to miss out on this World Cup. With the progression of both Paraguay and Bolivia, and they're 8th, they're 7th and 8th, I think it's done for Peru at this point. I don't think they're qualifying. And the same goes for Chile. Chile has missed out in the last two World Cups. Last time they qualified was in 2014. I think it's with the same with Chile. I don't think they're going to qualify either. Australia hasn't missed a World Cup since 2006. I feel they will not qualify in this round, but I think they may get into the second, get into round four. I think they could just about get fourth place, maybe, and they will qualify for that round. I think Australia's still got something in them to qualify. At least if they do, then it will probably be in the fourth round. Finally, China. I think they struggled. They struggled in the second round of the qualifiers. They're already struggling in this round. I don't think China's qualifying. The last time they qualified was in 2002. I think that wait will continue. It's unfortunate with Peru and Chile obviously being two of the original 13 nations to qualify for the very first World Cup. But yeah, they're currently both 10th and ninth. Speaking of another original 13, that's Bolivia. I Oh, this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one. I don't think they're going to get the automatic playoff spot. I think they may finish seventh though. I'm not sure in whose expense, but I feel if Bolivia do qualify, they probably end up seventh. The last time Bolivia qualified for a World Cup was in 1994. Ironically enough, that was in the USA. 2026 will be in the USA, Mexico, and Canada. Uzbekistan next. This will be their very first World Cup if they qualify, and I think they will. I do. Have to be first or second in their group to qualify. They're in the same group as Iran, and I think Iran might finish first or second with them, just like they both did in the second round. I think it will be their very first World Cup, Uzbekistan, if they qualify. Uh, Colombia now. Colombia missed out on the last World Cup in 2022, but they won't miss out on this one. They're qualifying. I'm pretty sure they are. They're second currently in the CONMEBOL's World Cup qualifiers. They're qualifying this time. Samoa. If Samoa qualified, they would be only the third nation from the OFC to ever qualify for a World Cup. The very first was Australia and then New Zealand. As I said, Australia no longer in the OFC, but yeah, in that order. Yeah, yeah. This is a tricky one. I don't think they will. I, I might have to check it out again with New Zealand. I have to see the games in October. Just New Zealand, I kind of fancy them topping it, and then after that, I'm not really sure. I was quite impressed by them, but with only one spot to qualify, potentially two. If they do qualify, it'll be the playoffs, and then they'll be up against stronger teams. So I think if they don't qualify automatically, then I don't think they're going to qualify through the playoffs. So yeah, I've got to go with that, and I probably most likely they won't qualify. Finally, Japan, who have been qualifying for the World Cup consistently since 1998. Yeah, definitely they're qualifying for this one. Fantastic in the second round. Phenomenal start so far. 12 goals in two games. They're definitely qualifying, Japan. And I can't predict, obviously, right now. I don't really want to predict how well they would do in a World Cup. Without the UEFA starting, and still in the middle of both the CAF and the CONCACAF's World Cup qualifiers. At this point, both all of those three, by the way, will kick off in 2025 next year. Around March, I believe they're all kicking off then. That's when I might start having a little check and seeing who I think will do well. But my World Cup predictions will probably start at the beginning of 2026. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you liked it. And bye.